Yes, good afternoon. My name is Arno Strydom. I'm married to Linda Strydom, and we are members of the Waypoint Community Church for the last 3 years, more or less. I have got an interesting story. It's actually more than a story. On the 23rd of September, my wife and I planned a long weekend to visit our children in George. And during the week preceding, I felt a bit fluish, so I decided on that day, just before we go to George, to have a COVID test. So I was looking for somewhere to do a rapid test. So I wanted the results early in the morning, because obviously if I took it early in the morning, by the time the results are out, I might be halfway to George already. And the other thing is that we had friends coming from, the one guy coming from Cape Town, other people from Jeffreys Bay, and obviously my own children there, so I didn't want it to be the bearer of bad news, as it were, by being the guy with COVID at the function. So my wife, after I looked around in town for a place where I could do a rapid test, she told me that friends of ours recently also contracted COVID, and they went to a Dr. Schoeman in Patensie. So she said, on the route to George, let's just pop in there, because we both thought we didn't have it, but just as a precaution. So we packed our camper and hooked up the little trailer, and off we went, full of confidence that this can be an awesome long weekend. Arrived in Patensie, did the rapid test. It's like these paternity tests, and heaven beholds, Linda and I both tested positive for COVID. So, quite taken aback by this. Obviously, the weekend plans are out the window now. We had to turn the camper around, head back. We were waving when we left Uitenhage for some of my friends I saw along the route. And then like 2 hours later, we were back in town for the long weekend. But before after we were diagnosed, the doctor, obviously there's a standard set of pills I think they give COVID customers or patients. And the doctor said to me, listen, or she asked me, do you believe? Or she actually said, I hope you believe, because you're going to need more than medicine. And I just listened to it, and I didn't really take it too much to heart, because I wasn't feeling ill. And then we came back, and over the weekend, neither of us were really very ill or felt ill. On the Monday, I felt a bit more queasy, and then my tablets were up, so we had to go back to the doctor in any event. And when we got there, well, we knew the doctor was also going on leave for, I think, a week or two, and she had a locum standing in for her. And this guy said to me when I got there, well, first they put me in a drip, and I was lying there for 3 hours waiting for this drip to empty into me. And then the doctor said, it's very simple. His story is, the protocol is, if your oxygen levels falls below 85, then he will refer me to a hospital, and that's the story. Whereas Dr. Schoeman said, stay out of hospital as long as you can. So the doctor also asked me other questions, and he asked me, whether I have access to oxygen at my house. I said, no, I don't, but I'll make a plan if I have to. And one of the nurses, I've forgotten the name now. Yes, her name is Strydom. She also saw me the first day I was there, and she then said, listen, but we've got an oxygen machine which I can borrow you. And yes, so the guy gave me a host of medicine, and off we went with this oxygen machine, and also a little tester for your heart rate and your oxygen levels, one of these little testers. And then after I came back, I started to gradually become more ill, and probably for the best part of 5 or 6 days, I was just lying, and I was sleeping like 18 hours a day, sort of thing. But fortunately, I had a super nurse at home, my wife. She made sure I took my medicine, And other than that, every now and then, or not every now and then, on regular intervals, I had to take a Vicks steam with my head steaming. I don't know what that process is called, and then she would not pat me on the back, she would smack me on the back to loosen all the muck in my lungs. That was the excuse for beating me. But I must say, I think if it wasn't for her, I was just saying, I'm just glad I was the one that fell seriously ill, because I wouldn't have managed to nurse her as well as she nursed me. But other than that, nurse Strydom, during my period of illness, she actually came from Jeffreys Bay on 4 occasions to visit me, to just check how my lungs were doing, and just in general, just supporting us, and even buying stuff for us which we needed and so on. So it's actually amazing, how this whole thing worked out. And yes, obviously, subsequently I've now recovered. Still, my voice hasn't returned to its original pitch, but it's much improved from where it was. But during this whole period of being ill, but as I say, after I basically recovered, after the germs were dead, as it were, and I was just getting stronger. And obviously, this is the longest period I've ever not been working. I haven't been on leave or on holiday. Today is the 4th of November, and my last day of work is the 23rd of September. So I've never been off work for so long. I decided, well, just to give you some background on that, prior to contracting this virus, I was practicing as an attorney. I practice here in Uitenhage. So I would wake up in the mornings between 4 and 5, and then I'll do my attorney work until roughly 9 o'clock in the mornings. Then I also had a contract as a magistrate in town, so I would go to court from somewhere to 9 until 4 o'clock in the afternoons, and then back to my office until 6:30 in the evenings. And then obviously the work, I consulted with clients at my office, so then the work still had to be done somewhere, and that was then early in the mornings. And I just realized, with my condition after recovering and shortness of breath and lack of energy and so on, that type of lifestyle and working commitment just wasn't feasible going forward, and that I would have to make some radical changes somewhere. So I decided, obviously also some serious contemplation and prayer and meditation, I decided that the right thing to do was actually to resign as a magistrate, because that took a chunk of my day, and in a sense, I'm buying that time back now. And it also, just before I fell ill, I decided I had a rental collection department in my office as well, and I decided to close that with effect from the 1st of December. And then I also have just a regular general collection department as well. And that per definition, because you are working with debtors and creditors and collecting debt, there's always conflict involved, and you must bully people to get the money or whatever the expectation of the clients are. And that doesn't suit my personality quite down to the ground. And I also had an attorney in that department working for me. And but I wanted to close it, but didn't close that department because I didn't want to retrench or fire this woman because just of being selfish. It felt to me as I was selfish. It just so happened that whilst I was ill and really ill, that part I was sleeping 18 hours a day. During that portion, one of her university friends contacted her and offered her an employment. So when I came to, I learned from my wife that she'd actually placed or put in a resignation with effect from the 30th of October. And that now gives me the opportunity to actually close that department without having to sacrifice anybody in the process. So yes, so with all those things, if you look at all those things, I just got to realize, and I'm a firm believer, that bad very often is good. And this is, to me, a perfect illustration of how something very bad can actually turn out to be very good. Because, as I said earlier, I would never have terminated my employment with the Department of Justice because I enjoyed it. it was nice, and so I just wouldn't have said no. But due to the fact that I perceive that I won't have the energy to actually sustain all these things simultaneously, it forced me to make a hard decision. And the same way, as I said, I would normally not have fired that woman. She resigned by her own accord. So the Lord, in a sense, because obviously going back to what the doctor asked, I hope you believe, and yes, I am a believer. I'm more than a believer, I'm a Jesus follower. And as I say, in following him, I just realized that these things, he placed all these things in, it was preordained. I mean, the whole thing from the beginning, where we went to Jeffreys Bay, I mean, to Potensi, to the doctor, that entire script was written for me, because I've got doctors in town, but my regular doctor was on leave. I phoned his colleague, and he just spoke to me in general and said, listen here, I'll help you look for somebody with a rapid test, but nothing came of it, And then Linda said to me, but we know of this doctor there, and that caused us to go there. And then when I spoke to my regular doctor, who's actually a good friend of mine, he said to me, he wouldn't have been able to do what they did for me, because they didn't have access to a oxygen machine. So all those things, fell perfectly in place for me to feel ill and to obviously recover. And now, during this time of rest, to actually give me the time to just to reminisce on my past, and then also on my future. And so it's, as I said, it's one of those bad things that turned out extremely good. So I'm grateful for the Lord for carrying me through this tough time when I was ill, but even more grateful for him for the opportunity to make these life-changing decisions about my future. A couple of people asked me the question of, what went through your head in those, let's say, 10 or 8 days where you were just lying there for 18 hours a day. The crazy part is nothing. I wasn't thinking of anything. I was just breathing. I was just focusing on breathing. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't thinking of dying. I was just in a very, very neutral space where, as I say, I was just going through the motions, as we just taking in the minutes by minutes. The oxygen just assisted me with breathing. I never had the feeling that I was being choked, that I didn't get sufficient air. So obviously that also helped not to be anxious and so on. But once again, it's just the grace of God that provided all these things, be it the medicine, be it the machine, be it Linda, that assisted me to actually, because that's the other thing, I was never in pain. It was just a state of peace, as it were. I mean, I wasn't, I was seriously just at peace. With regard to what I learned from the experience, is that time doesn't belong to us. That we've got this notion of thinking that we've got a set number of years in the vicinity of 70 or 80, whatever, and that you've got still time left to do whatever you want to do. And I think that's a very big lie. And as far as I'm concerned, my priorities was wrong. I spent too much time working and too little time with my family or just relaxing. So going forward, that is also something which I then not only, you see, very often one say, I think I'm going to do something, I've decided, but we never follow through with the decisions. And in this instance now, I haven't merely decided, I've actually actioned it already. I've said that I'm going to retire as a magistrate, and I have in fact closed these 2 sections of my practice, which then leaves me with lots of time for my family, for myself, and just to do what the Lord placed on my heart, as it were. I am actively engaged with our church, and yes, I plan to obviously also spend more time being a Jesus follower. How often, and I said this the other weekend to somebody, I see myself as a marketplace minister, where actually I've always seen my employment as a place where I minister to people, not necessarily read from the Bible and pray for them, but just the godly principles and values when we do cases, even when I was a magistrate. And so obviously that I will continue to do, so as to be a light for the world and so on. Yeah.
My name is Linda, and I'm Arno's wife. But I've got another name that I got from the doctor, and that is a super nurse. Yes, I was worried. I mean, it's going to be, I'm going to lie if I say I wasn't worried. But usually during the night, you know, when it's dark, and he was on the oxygen, but it was just the oxygen through the nose. And then, you know, sometimes you'll think, what if the electricity goes off now? What's going to happen then? You know, and then I would just lie and pray, and it calmed me. And yes, luckily, I mean, I just knew I had COVID because my smell and my taste was gone. But otherwise, I felt 100%. Yes, so nursing him, you know, I just knew that there was more than just the medicine and the prayers. So I just felt the prompting to contact a Jock and ask him to, what is Nachlo? Communion. A communion for ons to kom hou. And you know, I mean, that was the second time he and Jacqueline came to visit us, and I really appreciate it. And yes, and I just knew after that things just turned for the better. And I firmly believe it was that day that, and Jacqueline played a song, I Speak Jesus, and I mean, I listened to that song 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day, and it just speaks to my soul, and I just feel that was the turning point. The experience that I'm taking from is what happened. I never feared COVID, and so I don't see this COVID that happened to us as a bad thing. I feel there was a godly intervention. You know, I told Arno, I think you're working too hard, but I mean, yes, we're going to slow down, but nothing happened. So I personally believe that God allowed it to happen for Arno to slow down and to look forward what the future holds in for him, because otherwise he wouldn't have done it himself. So I'm very excited going forward with him, and I mean, I know that he is always the one that in his work, I mean, he shows people that he's a Jesus follower, but and even now more, I think it's going to happen.